So, you want to make your own persona project, a personal narrative recounting your life events through the lens of eras that capture your life stages. There are countless benefits to this therapeutic practice, but there are also risks associated with such a personal project. So before you get ahead of yourself, let's go over the basics and ask the big questions first to see if a persona project is the right next step in your healing journey. What is persona project? PetPyves persona project is a concept of exploring one's trauma through the creation of characters that represents oneself at different life stages, eras. It follows the basis of a personal narrative along with therapeutic tactics such as shadow work and healing the inner child through interactions with the inner adult. It is an autobiographical retelling of PetPyves' real-life events. What is a personal narrative? A personal narrative is a type of writing where an individual recounts a true story from their life, often focusing on a specific event or experience that holds significance for them. It's typically written in first person and aims to share a story and its meaning with the reader. The focus of these projects is about speaking truths, healing wounds, and gaining closure through works of nonfiction, depicting real-life people, places, and events. This can be represented through characters, art, animations, comics, written works, etc., and can be explored using a variety of terms and formats. What is shadow work? Shadow work is a self-exploration process where individuals investigate and integrate unconscious aspects of their personality that they have typically rejected or repressed. These hidden aspects, often viewed as negative or undesirable, are explored to achieve a more complete and balanced sense of self. What is inner child work? The inner child is typically described as a person's supposed original or true self, childhood self, especially when regarded as damaged or concealed by negative childhood experiences. The inner adult is often seen as the counterbalance to the inner child, which represents the more emotional, reactive, and often vulnerable aspects of ourselves. One might refer to their current self as the inner adult. The work comes into play when the inner adult connects with the inner child through reparenting tactics and self-acceptance exercises. Questions before you start. What life stage are you in? If you're an adult, you qualify to start writing your personal narrative at any time. Young adults, and elders have enough life experience and emotional maturity to reflect on specific memories while being able to create more than 3 eras. In addition, adults know, accept, and combat risks of sharing personal information publicly or online in ways minors do not. Adults should also have access to healthcare and licensed professionals to help them through this intense process. If you're a minor, I will discourage you from beginning a project like this for many reasons. For one, your personal information should never be shared publicly or online. Second, you are still growing and developing. You're likely not in the proper life stage to consider such deep reflection, and therefore will not reap the same benefits. Lastly, minors should never tackle this personal project without the guidance of a trusted adult or licensed professional. Teens, preteens, and children can sometimes benefit from a persona project, but it is usually decided by trusted adults, therapists, and teachers who will also help guide them throughout writing an autobiography. It is not something a child should decide for themselves alone, as this is an intense therapy exercise. Are you in a safe place? While it's not impossible to heal in the midst of chaos or while you're still actively being wounded, it will make this process even more difficult and may lead to burnout or having your personal narrative never be completed. Waiting until you have a safe, stable home environment will be the best move for your mind and body to feel relaxed enough to be willing to relive the past and release unprocessed things. Having a good support system is always beneficial, but especially for writing an autobiography. Having family and friends close, as well as doctors and therapists ready, is necessary for maintaining your health and well-being throughout the process. While you can create a personal narrative without the help of professionals, it is not recommended for your own safety. Are you at the end of your healing journey? In my personal experience, the best time to start writing your life story is when you're at the end of your healing journey. It should act as the final bow to wrap up therapy. My therapist would not allow me to write an autobiography until I first completed dialectical behavior therapy as well as cognitive behavioral therapy. Everything you learn in DBT and CBT will be put to the test with creating a personal narrative. And most people succeed and complete their stories when they have those tools mastered. If you and your therapist do not feel you are close to graduation from therapy, it is not time to tackle a persona project. Keep working hard and be patient with telling your life story for the right time. Are you healthy enough for a persona project? It is as much of an emotional journey as it is a physical release. You will laugh, you will cry, you will ache. Your body is going to relive everything your mind does, and you will process through things you never imagined trapped inside of yourself. For that, I personally recommend being in good health both mentally and physically before writing an autobiography. Above all else, you need to be willing to adopt the mindset to accept, change, and even challenge memories and feelings that arise while writing your life story. This is best known as shadow work. You're going to have to face the best parts of yourself while learning to love and accept even your worst. Being in the right headspace to welcome all your eras, no matter how difficult, is crucial. What are your intentions for this project? If you're walking into a persona project with the wrong ideas, you'll be abusing a therapy tool meant to heal. You should never make a personal narrative to become rich or famous, seek revenge or harm others, expose or dox those who wronged you, get attention or sympathy, tell a fictional story, to create eras for entertainment or non-therapeutic work, cure boredom. You should be wanting to finish writing this narrative because you want peace. You want to accept the past so you can stop ruminating and look forward to a better future. You want to love yourself, all parts of yourself, and grow self-esteem, confidence, and reach self-actualization. You want to be seen, heard, and believed. This project should exist as a story of your truths and bring closure to parts of your life left untold. If you simply want to create fictional characters, eras that are not real, or tell a fictional character's story by utilizing eras, that's fine. You don't need the therapy side of this project, and you should disregard this guide. Are you an adult? Are you in a safe place? Are you ready to graduate from therapy? Are you in good physical and mental health? Do you intend for this project to bring you peace and self-actualization? If all these questions are answered with confidence, then you're ready to start building the groundwork for your persona project. Building a persona project. If you're still asking yourself, is my level of trauma fit for a project like this? The answer is always yes. It doesn't matter how much or how little trauma you've experienced in your life. It is still trauma. You are just as worthy of a healing journey as any other. Your pain is real. Never compare yourself to others. Your journey will look different from everyone else's, but that's okay because it's not their healing, it's yours. So let's begin. You can do these steps in any order you see fit. This is just the way I began. Creating your eras. Era concepts. Your life will be broken down into eras, facets of yourself at different life stages. You can have any number of eras you see fit. I recommend at least 3 to 5 for a full personal narrative. Look for indicators such as age and life stage, personality changes, location changes or moving, gender expression, interests, hobbies and fixations, likes, dislikes and favorites, friends and familial dynamics, major life events, and medical diagnoses. Personally, I recommend following the age and life stage division. It has a lot of flexibility and psychological and scientific backing to better understand the natural human progression of age, growth, and development. For my personal project, I made up my own life stage table, but you can use anything really. You can even look to life simulation games or actual psychologists like Eric Erickson and their life stage development charts. Eras can be as long or as short as you see fit. My own typically follow a 3 to 4 year time period each, outside of my inner child being 8 years. Even if you feel as you've drastically changed, for example, every year in middle school, that can still be captured in one era. This is why I personally recommend using life stages as a means to divide them. Here's a table on how I divided up my eras. I started out with the life stages and then moved on to my personality at the time, locations, gender, interests, likes and favorites, friends and family, major events, and any diagnoses I got. Once you have some basics down for each of your eras, you can start to put a name to them. If you're struggling, look for central ideas. Try to define each one with a single word or playbook. Updating the table, you can see how I picked a playbook for each of my eras. For Wild Child, I chose Adventurer, due to her being wild, it being at my childhood home, my gender being fluid, my interest being in nature, and my favorite color being green. Naming your eras should be a personal experience, something significant from that time. Here are some ideas for naming your eras. Synonyms related to the playbook, or single word assigned to them. Names of beloved characters from TV shows, toys, OCs, or song titles and lyrics. Online usernames or names based around them. Alternatives to birth names, similar but not exact. Old preferred names used during gender exploration, if not harmful. Notable features of locations at that time. Favorite holidays, idolized figures, or hyperfixations of that era. Nicknames or titles earned or coined by others during that era. Here's my table on how I named all of my eras. For Haley, I chose to use my birth name. Since the playbook is Mother, has a very true-to-life personality, it made a lot of sense to just use my actual name. Era designs. Considerably, the most fun part of this project is designing the faces of your eras, perfectly capturing every stage of your life in one character. Look at your table full of general ideas and look for patterns and main concepts. Here are some practices for exploring character design for your eras. Building color palettes based on favorite colors, room colors or themes, etc. Recalling clothing styles or preferences for that era. Basing hairstyles off the ones you had back then. Looking inwards and asking your eras how they want to be represented. Using favorite animals, cartoon characters, or OC traits. Using symbolic design choices, such as literal masks for neurodivergent masking. Reusing old persona or fursona concepts. Special trinkets they carry or wear from impactful events or people. Giving heirs things you wish you had but did not, like haircuts, piercings, etc. Creating mood boards using aesthetic images based off of a life stage or era. You can choose to keep some details consistent across all eras. For example, all my eras have green eyes because we're the same person, and eyes are the windows to the soul. I recommend at least having one detail that is present on all of your eras to signify you're the same person. Using the complete concept table, this is how I designed my eras. For Robin, it was in the name. It's the state bird of my new home, and this is the era where I moved out, which is very symbolic of birds. If you're an artist looking to draw your eras, I recommend starting by drawing as close to reality as you can to how you actually looked in that era. Example, I knew as a child I had wild, unkept, curly hair that was always messy and tangled. I've always been covered in freckles. My clothes were often small due to neglect, and I never wore shoes for that reason. I translated some of those true-to-life ideas to Tadpole Wild Child. Only I made her green because that's her favorite color and the color of my room, and she's a frog. Kept the freckles but made them very prominent on her froggy cheeks. And with the curly hair, I decided that would be the perfect tool to represent my autistic masking. The final detail being the tadpole tail to signify that she is a baby, and my youngest era. What you should gather from this is that every little detail, colors, shapes, clothing, etc., are symbolic and capture specific parts of my life. Alternatively, using your tables and keywords, search up images and find common color palettes and themes to help design and personify that part of your life. Creating your entities. You might benefit from turning other facets of yourself into entities, other physical manifestations outside of your eras. They can encapsulate parts of yourself that you wish to heal most, but should only ever be things that are meant to be healed and recovered from. Examples being mental illnesses, PTSD and CPTSD, personality disorders, DID, but not in all cases, eating disorders, addictions, nightmares or insomnia, negative or intrusive thoughts, toxic guilt and shame, shadows, or the false self. Non-examples being autism, ADHD, chronic and lifelong conditions, and disabilities, such as dyslexia. What's the difference? The reason you should not create an entity for something like neurodiversity is because it's a core part of you, not something that needs to be changed or cured. When it comes to those parts of yourself, you must go on a self-acceptance journey instead. Entities are not your monsters or demons. Do not create these entities to be perceived as the monsters, demons, or villains of your story. The purpose of personifying these illnesses and disorders is to make them feel human and accept them as part of yourself for however long they stay. Treat them as visitors. Difficult ones, yes, but treating them with kindness is part of the healing process. They must simply exist and are not evil or malicious in nature. Demonizing your conditions only adds to negative stigma and should be avoided. In fact, a major exercise with these entities is figuring out their motives and when they first developed. By seeking to understand these parts of yourself, you're looking to heal the entities alongside your eras. If you're struggling to accept difficult parts of yourself or parts of your reality, I welcome you to try some insightful practices known as radical acceptance. Radical means complete, mind, body, and heart. It's when you stop fighting or trying to change reality and start accepting it instead. It can be applied to eras, entities, and even memories. I found them very helpful in accepting shadows and difficult parts of myself. What to accept? Reality is what it is. Everyone has limits. Everything has a cause, and life can be worth living even with painful events in it. Why accept reality? Rejecting reality does not change reality. Changing reality requires first accepting reality. Pain cannot be avoided. It's nature's way of signaling that something is wrong. Rejecting reality turns pain into suffering. Refusing to accept reality can keep you stuck in painful emotions. Acceptance may lead to discomfort, but peace usually follows. Practices. Observe when you're questioning or fighting reality. Remind yourself that your past can't be changed. Remind yourself that there are reasons your past unfolded that way. Acknowledge that all your experiences, good or bad, led up to this very moment. Consider how people's lives have been shaped by shared events. Try fake it until you make it. List everything you would do if you did accept the facts. Then act as if you've already accepted them. Do what you would do if you really had accepted it. Rehearse in your mind what you would do if you accepted what seems unacceptable. Pay attention to your body as you think about what you need to accept. Allow disappointment, sadness, or grief to arise within you. Don't fight it or mask it. Do pros and cons if you find yourself resisting practicing acceptance. If you continue to struggle creating, designing, or accepting entities, you may choose to not have them in your personal narrative. As stated previously, please advise your psychiatrist or professional therapist and use your best judgment to determine what will aid you in your healing journey. Creating entities. Radical acceptance shows us where to begin when conceptualizing and personifying something such as a shadow, disorder, or dislike trait of ours. Start with as many facts as you can find in your previous era concepts chart. For me, I chose my formal diagnoses throughout my eras. Once you confirm these parts of yourself are okay to turn into entities, you can start to conceptualize them. Write down all the facts you know about these parts of yourself, such as the life stages they were present and major events surrounding them. Here's my example. Now that we have the facts, we can lean more into the imaginative side of conceptualizing entities. Really think about how you view your entity. If you could personify, let's say for example, your depression, how would they act? Or what feelings arise when you experience that disorder or part of yourself? Would they have a gender? What abilities or superpowers would this entity have that would correlate to what it's based on? Start to think outside of the box to personify it, and view it with a neutral lens, never negatively. Here is how I started personifying my entities. For CPTSD, I knew it was more of a somber and quiet and timid part of myself, and for me it always seemed like it had time alteration superpowers, where it could send me back to the past and make me relive things. This was good groundwork for conceptualizing this entity. Next comes the challenging part, gathering a general idea for an appearance for your entity. This will help if you choose to design them later, and should be practiced regardless if you draw, since you're going to be writing imagery of this entity in the future. This can be done a number of ways. Think about the age and life stage this entity appeared or was most powerful, personality changes that occurred due to the entity being present, location changes or moving that triggered entities, gender expression due to the entity being present, interests, hobbies, and fixations changed due to entities, likes, dislikes, favorites changed due to entities, friends and familial dynamics affected by entities, major life events affected by entities, and the actual medical diagnoses or self-discovery that occurred for each entity. In my table, I decided to make my depression and anxiety in the form of a cat. Something smart, something sneaky, but it was also Wildchild's favorite animal, which was the era that I first started showing signs I was depressed and anxious. Once you have some basic ideas down for each of your entities, you can start to put a name to them. If you're struggling, look for central ideas and try to define each one with a single word based off the information you've gathered about them. Going back to my previous example with my depression and anxiety, because of how much it was tricking me, I decided to name it the Trickster, because it was always tricking me to fall back into my old habits that were no longer serving me. Entity designs. It's time to capture a look for each entity to represent parts of yourself that need the most healing. Look to your table full of general ideas to look for patterns or main concepts. Here are some practices for exploring character design for your entities. Look to which era it started and find traits from that time period. Reference major events involving the entity to add to its design. Incorporate special items that remind you of that entity positively. Highlight parts of yourself / the era the entity is from that you want to love and accept more. Building color palettes based off of favorite colors, room colors, themes, etc. Looking inwards and asking your entities how they want to be represented. Using favorite animals, cartoon characters, or OC traits. Choosing symbolic design choices, or reusing old or unused character concepts. You can choose to keep some details consistent across all entities. For example, all my entities have eyes based off their acronyms. PTSD has 4 eyes, OCD has 3, etc. The anxiety-based disorders also share the same pattern of polka dots, while my dissociative disorders have stripes. Connecting some entities may be helpful in understanding how they coincide with one another within yourself. Notice how none of my suggestions are stereotypical monster or demon traits. Avoid negative and triggering design choices. Remember, you're trying to find room in your heart to love, accept, and heal this part of yourself. You should make your entity personal to you and lovable above all else. The idea is to create a creature, pet, or person whom you want to understand and help grow and change for the better. You must approach your design choices with caution and ensure you are not demonizing your conditions, as it only adds to negative stigma. If you're an artist looking to draw your entities, I recommend by starting drawing as close to reality or as literal as you can to get your basic appearance concept. Here's an example. I knew I wanted my AVPD to be represented by some important art piece from my past. Nothing stuck with me more than a mural on my childhood bedroom that was never finished. It represented the neglect and abandonment I faced, but also, ironically, showed a sun and rainbow and clouds. This, to me, perfectly captured what dissociation is like. So I started adding more human and creature details to stray away from the actual mural it was based on, though I decided she would be blind. It's symbolic of dissociation and shows a literal hole in my reality, tying everything together. Writing your eras. Once your eras have been conceptualized, named, and designed, it's time to move on to the most challenging, time-consuming part, recalling memories. This may be difficult if you have a trauma response to block memories, especially painful ones, so allow yourself a lot of time and patience during this process. What's most important about this part of the personal narrative isn't so much getting every little detail right, but the feelings you had. Even without those clear memories, you know there's probably a reason for that. You felt bad. Even if you can't remember a single thing, write that down. No memories as a bullet point is a powerful idea within itself. It calls you to question why. The whole point of this project is to get closure, and even without memories, at least noticing the gaps is a huge step in accepting your reality. Here are some ideas to aid with memory recall. Age and life stage moments. First words to first job. Personality defining moments. Risk taking and exploring. Location changes or moving households. Exploring sexuality and gender and defining labels for yourself. Interests, hobbies, and fixations throughout your life. Likes, dislikes, favorites, pet peeves, etc. Friends and familial dynamics, especially big changes. Crushes and relationships. Beloved pets and their stories and lives. Stories you heard from family members about your childhood. Major life events. Medical diagnoses or major illnesses or hospital events. School stages and grades. Classes, teachers, students. Important teachers and mentors and what you learned. Holidays, birthdays, and special events. Summer vacations, getaways, and once-in-a-lifetime moments. Precious gifts received or large purchases you've made. Firsts, riding a bike, trying new food, starting new skills. Lasts, breakups, favorite restaurant closes, etc. Seasons and the changes they bring. Significant weather events or natural disasters. And life and death cycles occurring around you. Notice something? These aren't all outright traumatic events. That's because your personal narrative should not be primarily a venting session. It's meant to be a balance between the good and bad in life. Coexisting, ever-changing. It's critical you include nuance when telling your story. While many trauma survivors develop black and white thinking, this process is meant to diminish that pattern. When recording events, they are just that, events. You can label them as good or bad later, but for the brainstorming session, just list the facts. Feelings will come in another step. My best advice is to write out every year since birth and start taking bullet notes on everything and anything you can remember. Going by season, that tends to help a lot. Spring, summer, fall, winter. On repeat until present day. Work backwards. Start with the present and slowly go into the past. It's normal and fine if details get more sparse since they aren't recent. It's okay if some areas have no memories at all. The purpose of this exercise is to perform a stream of consciousness or brain dump to gather as many memories as you can recall, but never leave a total blank. At least put no memory. Again, it's a powerful statement and blank spaces might feel pressuring and discouraging. Here's an example from my own persona project for year 1 of Wild Child's era. All of these memories honestly were just things that my family told me about when I was older. The only real memory that is my own is my first memory, which was riding in my dad's truck. There are spaces that I don't have any memories at all, and that's okay. I was a baby. I took some bullet points to even just introduce what people were like during that era, because people around me changed just as much as I did. As you can see, not every bullet point is an extremely important detail from my life, but rather a collection of every little thing I could remember about myself. Some things mentioned above are reminders of who I was at that age, such as loving something from my childhood living room or what I got for Christmas that year. Others are when people entered my life. And then of course, there are the core memories. Some traumatic, but all very vivid in my mind, no matter how mundane. It's those moments that need the most reflection. Ask yourself, why do I remember this so clearly? Because it usually means something. Even the silliest, smallest details you can grasp, hold on to them. You might find meaning in every little thing. Identifying core wounds. Another wonderful therapy exercise that will help you understand the drives and motives of your previous eras, in case you're not very in touch with them yet. You're going to create 3 tables for yourself: positive core beliefs, neutral core beliefs, and negative core beliefs. Core beliefs are a person's most central ideas about themselves, others, and the world. These beliefs act like lens through which every situation and life experience is seen. Because of this, people with different core beliefs might be in the same situation, but think, feel, and behave very differently. Here are some examples of my own core beliefs. I have a list of positive core beliefs, such as I'm intelligent, I'm trustworthy, I'm in control now. I have neutral core beliefs, I'm cautious to keep myself safe, I do the best I can, people care about me but I don't know why. And then I have negative core beliefs, such as I cannot make mistakes, I am limited, my opinions don't matter, no one will listen if I speak. We're now going to focus heavily on the negative core beliefs. You're going to track down the root of each one of these beliefs and tie them to the era that the thought process began. Try and write down the origin of that wound if you're able to recall specific memories or scenarios that may have contributed to that way of thinking. Here's some examples. good things will not happen to me without cost is something that started in Wild Child's era. The origin is, I couldn't enjoy anything without it leading to physical abuse, guilt tripping, or something going terribly wrong by coincidence. Another example, the future is uncertain. This started in Parker's era for me, and it was all because of graduation. I had no idea what I was going to do outside of being a perfect student because I was never given any other direction. As you can see, this exercise can get pretty dark and intense. It's shadow work at its finest, really digging into every era's worst mindsets and figuring out why they thought that way. You will need this chart when you begin writing because it can help you remember the main themes, motivations, and ideas your era suffered from in that moment. Feel free to complete the positive core beliefs and neutral core beliefs chart for each era too. Having a balance of good and bad helps with nuance. Setting up themes. A theme is the big idea of a story. It's the underlying message that the author wants to convey to the reader. No matter the format you've chosen, you will need some form of writing to tell your story. Having a theme or multiple themes to span across the entire thing for certain eras or even one particular episode or chapter is a great practice to have. Here's some themes from my personal narrative. One that I have across all eras is autistic masking, wearing a mask to hide autism and my true self. There's also the theme of forever, black and white thinking, catastrophizing, and thinking in extremes. But then I have era-specific themes, such as in Blackbird's era, broken wings. The wings were broken from having an abusive childhood that Blackbird is in denial of. Setting up themes is completely optional, but I found it very helpful during the writing process. Choosing a format. There is no wrong way to tell your story. Choosing a format and medium that works best for you is important for your persona project. You might cycle through many different options before you settle on one, so allow yourself grace when testing formats for your personal narrative. Here's some common examples of personal narrative formats. You could write a book. I recommend books for those who read and write as a hobby, don't really need to draw or illustrate or animate, need every year of your life broken down into chapters, and aren't comfortable with visually expressing your story. There's comics, which requires writing and drawing. I recommend this for those who like to read, write, and draw comics, prefer a visual novel over blocks of text, those who need an option for less descriptive writing but more dialogue, and the need to express their story visually. Podcasts are also an option, and all you need is to record audio. This is great for those who listen to podcasts and audiobooks, don't need to draw, illustrate, or animate, need an option for minimal writing, literally just bullet points, are not comfortable with visually expressing their story, being physically heard telling their story is therapeutic and healing, and for those who prefer less structure and more improvised retelling of their story. The last category is probably the least common, and that is animation. You're going to need writing, drawing, recording, and animating. This is great for people who animate and draw as a hobby, need to express their story visually, need a balance of descriptive writing and dialogue, want to focus on individual memories as episodes, being physically heard telling their story is therapeutic and healing, and for those who want to create a combination of audio, visuals, and writing to express their story, as if they and the audience are reliving it. The most common form of personal narratives is told through books, because it's easier to write by breaking down your life's years into chapters. Most people start by writing a book first. I recommend this being the first format you try, because even if you scrap it, all the other formats require some writing, so none of your efforts will be lost. Before you write, I want to cover some of the side effects you might experience while writing and how to best cope with them. It's important to be mindful and take breaks when you notice these things creeping in. The physical feelings of lethargy and tiredness, weakness, aches and pains, tense muscles, headaches, stomach aches, temperature changes, crying or holding back tears, as well as the emotional feelings of resistance or dread, grief and loss, anger and frustration, depression or sadness, anxiety and fear, irritability, and stress or distress. While it's good to catch these feelings before they become harmful, there are some side effects that may appear outside of the writing process. Remember, you're tapping into some dormant trauma tangled up inside of your body. Working through your life story will be a physical release as much as an emotional one. Speak with your doctor, physician, or therapist if you're experiencing any of the following to a debilitating degree: high emotional reactivity and irritability, anxiety and panic attacks, increase in nightmares and night terrors, insomnia or changes in sleep habits, loss of appetite or overeating, depression or anxiety intensifying, non-suicidal self-injury or self-harm, or suicidal thoughts. If you're in a crisis, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at suicidepreventionlifeline.org or 988 or your local emergency services. Please reach out to trusted friends, family, therapists, or reliable resources if you are in distress. Here are some ways to prevent side effects from escalating into harm. Exercise. I know, ew. awful. But moving your body at least once a week for an hour at a time can help work out the tension in your muscles from the stress of writing and recalling your past. It doesn't have to be an intense workout. I actually suggest slow walks, mindful movements like yoga or stretching, and being in your body to listen to what it needs. See your doctor or physician regularly. Let them know you're doing this sort of trauma work so you can report debilitating side effects if they occur, and get help as soon as possible. Take care of yourself. This means performing self-care acts, such as eating your favorite foods, wearing comfortable clothes, hugging comfort stuffed animals, taking time to call friends and laugh, playing video games after intense writing session. Do yourself a favor and set yourself up for success while working on this project. This means taking preventative measures, ensuring you drink water while writing, plan to only write for 1 hour, etc. before you start, as well as rewarding yourself when you finish. Have a treat, take deep breaths, etc. Writing. This part of the process should be the most emotional, most rewarding, and most therapeutic. All that prep work led up to this. If you're ready to start writing, start from the beginning. If you can't or get stuck, skip around to the most vivid memories on your timeline you created. The other memories can be filled in at a later time. There's no right or wrong way to write something like this. It's a personal project for you, so however you see fit, that's the best method to write it. Your persona project will not look the same as anyone else's, and that's the beauty of it. Depending on what format you've chosen, the writing process will look different. I'll provide examples for each method based on my own experiences. Writing a book. When planning my own personal narrative in book format, I decided to create chapters around a central event or person and then pile in the memories surrounding it. Here's an example of my planning chart. I would have an event, such as the family divorce, a description, and the age that occurred and what chapter I think would fit best. Once I had my chapters planned, I titled my story. The voice, language, and style of writing is whatever naturally came to me. I started writing my personal narrative as if I were telling a story to a stranger. I never tried to force a particular way of writing and let it flow out as is. Remember, it doesn't have to be a professional masterpiece. It's a personal project. Here's a small excerpt from my first chapter. I recall squealing like I won the lottery when I saw Dad's blue Chevy pull into the facility. One signature dad bear hug later, and I was free. I saw Buzz and Dove with their fingers tangled in the chain link fencing that caged the children to the confines of the sun-bleached playground, as if I wasn't in their shoes just moments prior. I waved cheerfully. "Can we stop at the convenience store?" I asked, knowing if I really played in how cute I was, I might get better results. I knew damn well it was convenience store, but as long as I acted innocent, they would usually bite. One trip to that slushy-stained Hess later, I got myself my usual blue raspberry Kool-Aid and a pack of gum. Either Hubba Bubba or ice cubes. Whatever's the most sour and sugary. This was my after-school treat with Dad. He felt guilty for forcing Evan and I into childcare after the divorce, so he begrudgingly took us kids for candy and junk food after picking us up. At the time, this was satisfactory payment for his sins. Here's how I followed my memory recall, core wounds, and themes throughout this chapter. Memory recall. I started this chapter while Child was 7 years old in elementary school. I chose a daycare memory. I focused on this memory the most because I wanted to highlight my naivety as a child, how innocent and privileged I was at the time without ever knowing it. Core wounds. Good things do not happen to me without cost played a heavy role in how I wrote this. I got candy because of the divorce. I can't leave early from daycare without feeling guilty. Emphasis on having the good, but the mindset that it wasn't going to be something that was given, but earned. Themes. Freedom was the main theme that I wanted to start my personal narrative with. Above all else, this idea needs to span across my entire life story, so chapter 1 was going to be setting up the stage for that theme. You can follow this format chapter by chapter, or go off the rails and create your own thing. In fact, that's what I encourage you to do. My examples are here to guide you or spark inspiration. They're not law. It's your personal project, and this is the hardest part. However you can write it and finish it, that's the best method. Creating a comic. Here's an example of how I planned my comics. I knew I wanted an introduction to introduce my eras. Then I wanted to cover my hyperfixations throughout all of my eras, and that would include all of them on page 2. Once I had my pages planned, I started writing out scripts, focusing heavily on dialogue. It was nothing fancy, but it did help me gauge how long the page was going to be. I also included drawing notes, framing, and any artistic choices I wanted to make for future reference. With the script ready, I drew my comic. I made it sketchy since I wasn't experienced in making comics at all, and I didn't care to polish it because I was going to be the only one that saw it. It comes down to personal preference, but I suggest doing whatever is easiest and most realistic for you to actually finish the project. And this is how my comic turned out. This is the introduction comic page. This was going to be the first page of my comic book. It introduces the eras and a little bit about each of them and why I designed them that way and my hopes for the project. Recording a podcast. For your podcast, you're going to rely heavily on the memory recall exercise. I recommend creating bullet notes around a central event or person and then pile in the memories surrounding it. Here's some examples of how I did bullet notes for each episode of my podcast. One event was Neopet Comedy. Here are the notes. Brother and I recorded our action figures and made stories out of them. Papa gave us a camera for it. Bob the cannibalistic flying goat was a main character. We'd sometimes have to stop recording because my dad and his toxic girlfriend would fight in the background. This happened at age 7, and this would be my first episode. Once I had my episodes planned, I started recording. It was never super scripted, but it can be if you'd like it to be. Use the writing a book section if you prefer to read out your story novel style. For my podcast, I wanted a more improv-like approach to it. Follow my bullet point notes and let whatever comes out naturally happen. I kept my episodes to about 20 to 30 minutes each and lightly edited out gaps of silence. You're free to make them as long or short or detailed as you see fit. Editing your audio isn't required. This format is very lax. Starting an animated series. I highly doubt anybody is going to be doing this format. I wouldn't recommend this method to anybody who isn't extremely well versed in animation. It's definitely not for everyone. Nevertheless, I will include a guide anyways. I found it easiest to take the memory recall exercise and start building out every memory and bullet point into an episode. For the smaller details, I tacked them onto the broader memory and would decide in script writing how much of those details I would keep. You're going to want to go year by year, with each year acting as a season of episodes. Here's my planning chart for Wild Child's Year 3 of Persona Project. In the spring, I caught a praying mantis that killed my caterpillar. I also caught snakes and toads and built hotels for them to relax at, and I even caught bugs to feed them with. Each one of the main bullet points is an episode. All of the other little details are also just small memories that I could include in the scripts. Once the episodes are outlined, now comes the actual script writing. You're going to be writing almost exclusively dialogue with hints of narration in between. I included art and animation direction in my scripts as well to ensure I captured all the details I thought of while writing. Here are some examples of scripts from Persona Project. For episode 22, Praying Mantis, I have each of my eras and myself's dialogue, along with some animation notes. I typically write for one of the years or seasons, then record the audio, edit it together, and start animating it. That way, I'm taking breaks between writing. When recording, I highly recommend doing all the voiceover and voice acting yourself. It's important your voice is always being heard when telling your story. You don't have to have experience in this field, just reenact what you remember. You alone know exactly how things played out from your perspective. In fact, if it's more comfortable, you can choose to purely narrate your story and not act out your eras at all. How you choose to animate your series is, again, up to you. I choose to make mine very colorful and lively since that's how I perceive the world and feel most comfortable expressing myself. I chose short-form content to create my animations to help keep me motivated and consistent. I found that 1-minute episodes are the happy medium. Going to 3 to 5 minute territory feels stressful in my experience. My only gripe with this format is the canvas is tall and not wide. I hate how many visual details I can't include because of that. So which format is for you? Let's talk about the facts and then the opinions for both. For short form, the facts are, it's formatted for phones, it's less visual details, it forces you to stay within 1 to 3 minutes per episode, and it's less time consuming. But in my opinion, it's for those who can't handle and finish large projects, and it's for those who animate and draw on mobile devices or on tablets and computers. For long form, the facts are, it's formatted for TVs, it's more visual details, no episode time limit, and it's more time consuming. My opinions on it are that it's for those who prefer and can finish large projects, and for those who animate and draw on tablets and computers. I can't tell you exactly how to animate your series, that's your own process, but all the steps provided should help you get to the point of art and animation, which is the final step. I recommend putting subtitles on your work, both for long form and short form content. That way your story is visually being told on screen in combinations with the visuals and voiceover. Not a requirement, but I've found that the subtitling has helped me greatly in making sure all my words are clear and understood. Committing to finishing. I won't sugarcoat it. Recounting everything that's happened to you and putting it to rest is a massive undertaking. But if you stay consistent, stay motivated, and work hard for your future eras, they will thank you, and your Persona project will see an end. Tips for staying consistent. Set 1 day every week aside for your mental health. Devote at least 1 day a week to therapy, writing your narrative, processing emotions, venting to trusted loved ones, and simply being present in your body. It's crucial to have self-care when reaching the finish line of your healing journey. It doesn't have to be the same day every week, though it can help, so long as you show up every time. That's the hardest part. Schedule weekly therapy with a licensed professional. With their guidance and routine visits, you could both work through every facet of a personal narrative's creation while maintaining your health and well-being. They're the best people to ask questions. If this option is not available to you or unaffordable, try looking into free counseling in your area or online. Share your story. You don't have to publicly share your personal narrative. In fact, I don't recommend it, but it will help greatly if you have trusted family, friends, or therapists to listen to each part that you complete as it comes comes out. With my own persona project, I posted it online publicly because my therapist encouraged me to. It's part of my own personal methods for healing, since my childhood was full of gaslighting and rare events that made me question my own reality. I had to make it real by hearing the responses of others. It made me see how abnormal it was, and above all else, made me accept it was real. For some people, sharing publicly is highly motivating and rewarding, but it is not for everyone. You're entitled to your privacy, and you may never share your story with anyone but yourself, and that's okay. I have personally found that it helps with consistency to have a listener. Tips for staying motivated. Practice mindfulness and remain present. I know mindfulness gets tossed around online haphazardly nowadays, and because of that, its true meaning feels lost. It's not about focusing super hard on everything. It's the subtle act of noticing. Notice the sun shining in your room, the warmth of your food, the soapy smell of a shower. Being present and in tune with your body and your emotions will keep you motivated to write your narrative, because when difficult topics and feelings arise, you can notice them and take breaks. Otherwise, you will burn out. Your future eras are counting on you. It's one thing to create eras for your past, but you have to remember your future eras will exist one day, and they are counting on the decisions you make right now to better them. Half the time, I don't want to cry while drawing something sad for my past. But then I think about who I'll be as an elderly person, and how grateful I'll be that I took my life back from my abusers so young. There's something really powerful about loving yourself, especially future you. It's an act of love to repair the damage now, so a version of you that you haven't met yet can thrive. Stay connected with your support group. Rely on your friends, family, coworkers, teachers, therapists, roommates, partners, etc. now more than ever. Let them know the sort of project you're taking on, and communicate how they can best help you. Boundaries will be your best friend during this healing period of your life. And while writing a persona project, it's okay to say no, take breaks, and ask for help. Start a different creative project at the same time. This might sound a little crazy, but genuinely, having another project that has nothing to do with retelling your personal story is a great way to still feel like you're working if you've got the itch, while not burning yourself out on your persona project. It's good to have things to switch between when you're tackling heavy topics. So yes, even if it's something as small as writing a song or as large as starting a video game let's play, having a side project to relieve some stress outside of your narrative is motivation fuel. Sharing your story. When to share your personal project. Not everyone will benefit from publicly sharing their personal narrative. I don't recommend it. In fact, most people keep their project private, as it contains personal and identifying information. There are many cautions to take if you wish to proceed with telling your story to the world, and you need to assess if it's the best option for you in your healing journey. Examples of reasons to share. If you have lived through rare and extreme circumstances, if you have suffered from intense gaslighting, derealization, or have kept things like dark family secrets or terrible truths against your will. You were told, as a victim, that no one would believe you. Justice was never served in your past, so you must create your own. You seek solace in knowing that you are not alone in your experiences, like being a minority. You wish to help others by teaching them what you've learned and how to heal too. Non-examples. You have personal and identifying information in your narrative that would dox unwilling or unknowing participants in your story. It will endanger you to share truths. You are not in a safe environment. You seek fame, fortune, or something outside of healing. They can happen, but should not be your primary reason for sharing. You wish to harm those who wronged you and get revenge. Attention-seeking or demanding sympathy from strangers. You cannot handle the criticism or comments on your life events or decisions. It comes down to your specific trauma history, how you choose to make your truth a reality, whether it is heard by many or simply retold for you and only you, needing outside witnesses to feel believed and gain closure, wanting the comfort of finding like-minded people with similar struggles, what specific details are included in your story, and how you're going to handle commentary on your most personal experiences. If you choose to share, you must protect yourself and your privacy. You must respect the unknowing and unwilling participants in your story by protecting their identities. This is for their safety as well as your own. This means altering names, locations, etc. This cannot be stressed enough. Online safety is crucial when you're putting your entire life into the world. If creating code names for people or making fake names for the old schools you attended feels inauthentic to your story, then please consider keeping your persona project private. You're absolutely entitled to tell your story however you like, but I care deeply for your safety and will advise against putting your personal information out there, even for something as serious as this project. You need to be prepared for the risks associated with posting something as personal and serious as this online or publishing it to a company. People are judgmental, cruel, and above all else, self-centered. They may try to piggyback and vent their story over yours. They might judge bad decisions you made in life, even though you're being honest and owning them. They might sympathize with your estranged family. You simply cannot predict how the world will perceive your story, so you have to be prepared to protect your peace. Best practices for sharing personal stories online. Provide content warnings for sensitive topics to avoid harming others. Create and establish firm boundaries around the project. See this video for an example on how I tackled mine. Turn off comments if necessary, especially for retelling traumatic events. Enlist the help of moderators to help keep your community safe. Ignore the loud minority of negative comments and give special attention to positive supporters. If you find that sharing your project becomes a burden or does not satisfy your expectations to help heal, stop uploading it publicly and return to creating it privately. At the end of the day, this project is an act of self-love, and it's for no one else but you. It's a privilege to share your story, and if others abuse it, take it away. It was never for them, but you. If you choose to not share, congratulations! You now have a complete retelling of your life story that you created for no one but yourself. An act of love so deep it can be passed down to your children, their children, for generations. Memoirs, autobiographies, they become history. Even if they're only shared with a few or never shared at all, that persona project will be your truth. And that alone is your greatest accomplishment, your peace. If you have further questions or need clarification on any of the topics mentioned in this video, feel free to leave a comment below. The document version of this guide will be available and will be updated as needed. If you choose to create a persona project, I wish you the best of luck and happy healing. I hope this guide helps you along in your journey.